What if you woke up tomorrow and found that your world had drastically changed overnight? This was the reality for the French in 1789. Imagine waking up to find that the centuries-old societal norms you've always known are being upended. This was the dawn of the French Revolution, a tumultuous period that would forever alter the course of history. In the late 18th century, France was a nation grappling with severe economic hardships. The cost of living was soaring, and the majority of the French populace was left bearing the brunt of these financial woes. The coffers of the monarchy were drained by extravagant spending and costly wars, leaving the common people struggling to fend off starvation and poverty. Meanwhile, the aristocracy, living in opulence and splendor, seemed to be immune to the hardships faced by the masses. This stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots was a breeding ground for discontent. The French people yearned for a society where they were represented, where their voices were heard, and where their concerns were addressed. In response to the growing unrest, the Estates General was convened in 1789. This assembly, which was traditionally divided into 3 estates, was the closest thing to a parliament in the French monarchy. However, the Third Estate, which represented the majority of the population, was always outvoted by the First and Second Estates, which consisted of the clergy and the nobility. But change was on the horizon. The Third Estate demanded equal representation and the abolishment of the noble veto, a power that allowed the nobility to overrule any decisions made by the commoners. When their demands were met with resistance, they took a bold step. They broke away and formed the National Assembly, vowing to create a constitution that would limit the power of the monarchy and ensure equality for all. This pledge, known as the Tennis Court Oath, was a pivotal moment in the unfolding revolution. And thus, under the pressure of economic hardship and the call for equality, the spark of revolution was ignited. This was not just a fight for bread, it was a fight for justice, for representation, for a better tomorrow. The stage was set for a revolution that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy, leading France and the world into a new era. Imagine a symbol of oppression, a fortress prison that held the power of the monarchy. Now, imagine it falling to the people. This is precisely what happened on July 14, 1789, as the people of Paris stormed the Bastille. A fortress turned prison, the Bastille had long been a symbol of royal tyranny. Its fall was not just about freeing prisoners, it was a decisive statement against the monarchy's iron-fisted rule. The air was thick with tension that morning as Parisians gathered around the fortress. Their voices, a symphony of discontent, echoed through the streets. The people were hungry, not just for bread, but for freedom, for equality, for a France that belonged to them, not the monarchy. With every stone that fell from the Bastille's formidable walls, the people's resolve grew stronger. The fortress that once held the power of the monarchy had fallen to the will of the people. The storming of the Bastille was more than a violent siege. It was the spark that ignited the French Revolution, the first major act of defiance against the monarchy. With the Bastille taken, the revolution had truly begun, and there was no turning back. What would you do if you could change the very fabric of society? The French did just that in the summer of 1789. A wave of paranoia and suspicion, known as the Great Fear, swept through France. Rumors of an impending aristocratic plot to suppress the revolution stirred the rural peasantry into an agrarian insurrection. This insurrection was a direct challenge to the feudal system that had dominated France for centuries. In the face of this chaos, the National Assembly took a radical step. They abolished feudalism. This was a monumental act, a clear break from the past, and a bold stride towards a new egalitarian society. But the revolution didn't stop there. The National Assembly, riding the momentum of their drastic reforms, adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This remarkable document proclaimed the democratic principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. It affirmed that power resided not in the monarchy nor in the nobility, but in the people themselves. In a society once bound by strict hierarchy, the winds of change had begun to blow. How would it feel to see a king fall from grace, to witness the end of a monarchy that had ruled for centuries? The French Revolution was not just a fight against economic hardships and aristocratic privilege. It was a struggle for political reform that would forever change the landscape of France. In the early stages of the revolution, the National Assembly drafted a constitution that aimed to balance power. establishing a constitutional monarchy. This was a significant shift from the absolute monarchy that had previously held sway. Under this new system, the king would retain his position but with limited powers, while the National Assembly would hold legislative authority. However, the winds of change were blowing stronger than ever. The constitutional monarchy was seen by many as a half measure, a compromise that failed to meet the demands for true equality and liberty. The radical factions within the revolution, unappeased by the constitutional monarchy, called for the establishment of a republic. This call for a republic was not just a political statement, it was a direct challenge to the monarchy, to King Louis XVI himself. The radicals demanded that the king be tried for his perceived crimes against the French people, and so King Louis XVI, once an absolute monarch, found himself on trial, not as a king, but as a citizen of the revolution. The trial culminated in the execution of King Louis XVI, an event that sent shockwaves through France and beyond. The king's execution marked the fall of the monarchy, an institution that had stood for centuries. The French monarchy's fall was not just the end of an era, it was the beginning of a new chapter in the history of France, a chapter written by the people, for the people. With the fall of the monarchy, the French people had seized their destiny, but the journey was far from over. Can you imagine a time when fear ruled, when thousands were executed in the name of the revolution? That time was known as the Reign of Terror, a chilling period during the French Revolution when the guillotine became a symbol of revolutionary justice. The Reign of Terror began in 1793, following the abolition of the monarchy. The radical political group, the Jacobins, seized control and were determined to purge France of enemies of the revolution. Robespierre, the leader of the Jacobins, became one of the most powerful men in France. He saw the terror as an instrument of justice, a necessary response to the counter-revolutionary conspiracies. Under the Jacobins, the revolution took a severe turn. Arrests were made without trials, and suspected enemies of the revolution were condemned to death. The guillotine worked tirelessly, its blade falling on the necks of thousands, including King Louis XVI and his queen Marie Antoinette. But the terror did not discriminate. It devoured the high and the low, the powerful and the weak. Even prominent Jacobins fell victim to their own revolution. The paranoia and violence spiraled out of control, and soon enough the revolution began to turn on itself. In 1794 the tide began to shift. Robespierre, the architect of the Reign of Terror, was accused of tyranny. He was arrested and, in a twist of poetic justice, met his end at the guillotine. His execution marked the fall of the Jacobins and the beginning of a more moderate phase. The Reign of Terror had ended. The Thermidorian reaction, as it came to be known, saw a rollback of the radical policies of the Jacobins. The government was restructured, the economy was stabilized, and a sense of normalcy began to return. But the revolution had changed France forever. The Reign of Terror had ended, but the scars of the revolution ran deep. It was a time of fear, a time of violence, a time when the ideals of freedom, equality, and brotherhood were drowned in blood. But it was also a time that shaped the future of France, a time that showed the world the power of the people, and the world would never be the same again. How does a revolution that happened centuries ago still resonate today? The French Revolution, a tumultuous period from the late 18th century, was a transformative force not just for France, but for the world. It was a time when the common people rose against the centuries-old monarchy, demanding equal representation and the abolishment of the noble veto. The revolution began with the convening of the Estates General in 1789, followed by the formation of the National Assembly and the taking of the tennis court oath. These were the first steps in a journey that would radically reshape French society and politics. The Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny, was stormed, and the Great Fear, an agrarian insurrection, led to the abolition of feudalism. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was adopted, proclaiming democratic principles that were unheard of at the time. A constitution was drafted, giving birth to a constitutional monarchy. But the revolution was far from over. Radicals called for a republic and the trial of King Louis XVI, leading to the abolition of the monarchy. The Jacobins seized control and instituted radical measures, including the Reign of Terror, a dark period during which thousands were executed. This era of bloodshed ended with the execution of Robespierre, marking a more moderate phase in the revolution. But why is this important today? The French Revolution fundamentally changed the course of history. It signaled the rise of the common man and the fall of the monarchy, setting the stage for the modern democratic principles we hold dear. It was a beacon of hope for those oppressed by autocratic rule, inspiring future revolutions and movements for equality and justice. It also serves as a stark reminder of the cost of freedom. The Reign of Terror demonstrated the dangers of radicalism, showing us that the pursuit of liberty, equality, and fraternity should never come at the expense of human life. The French Revolution, a testament to the power of the people, continues to echo through the ages, reminding us all of the cost of freedom and the enduring spirit of revolution.